I don't like sitting there thinking that I've contributed to the abuse that I've experienced.
Well, also, like, that's not something that you go to right away.
What do you mean?
Like, that isn't when you were working through healing from abuse that you've experienced, when you were working through the steps, when you were like understanding the part of you that, and whether it was like because it was a program that you've had since infancy and that you never had any other thing, or whether it's something that you learned in high school or you learned at any point in your life, like you don't jump to how is it your fault,
Very much.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
You don't do that. And that's probably the space that most people start in, but not from a healthy way. From a, oh, of course it's my fault. Of course, if I would have just been better, they wouldn't, if we go to the violence, they wouldn't hit me if I did do this,
Mhm,
if I didn't
mhm.
make them mad, all of these things. That is not the time. That is the time when you are like, you've got to flip that judgment and be like, they are doing this.
Yes.
This was their fault. This was not my fault. This was their
That's
choices.
so important to bring up.
That's what I'm like really, really honing in on. This is not time for you to take accountability for your actions when you're in that spot. When you're talking
Yes.
about the abuse, it is
Yeah,
not
there's
the
like
time,
levels of healing that take place.
right?
And a part of healing when you're a victim is being able to use your voice
Yes.
to start creating safety and security around you, start to be able to point out when things
Yes.
aren't safe, starting to be able to call out
Yes.
the abuser. All of those things are like super
Mhm.
important and levels of healing that take place.
And it can be like, it doesn't have to be extreme violence either. It can be like very like unhealthy dynamics in
Oh,
a
yeah.
relationship, all the way to saying, this is not okay with me. I'm not participating in this
Hmm.
longer. These are behaviors that you need to address.
Yeah.
They are not my fault.
And all of those are really important
Yes.
stages of
Stages.
like the healing process, right?
Yes.
And for me, I've gone through and am going through and continually navigating a stage of growth and healing for myself
Mm-hmm.
where I'm looking at, because I can't say that two things can be true if I'm not willing to sit with that, meaning that their truth is also real. So if there's somebody that holds a truth that I disagree with, I have to be willing to sit in that space and at least entertain that that truth is real.
It's real for them. It doesn't have to be real for you.
Correct.
Yes.
So that means that people that have abused me but don't see it that way or don't think of it that way, I have to also be willing to sit in that. Or people that would think that I am the person that's contributing to abuse by my actions and my choices. I might disagree with that, but I have to be willing to sit in the uncomfortableness of, well, maybe they're right.
Yeah.
So it's constantly being able to go back and forth between looking at there's truths in all things and there's also not, right?
Right.
It's really about the person's perspective and where they're at.
That's kind of, I just want to say real fast, because where you were saying of like, you're looking at your role. That was like my
Mhm.
thing of like, this isn't where you start.
Yeah.
Like, this takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of separation from the environment. It takes a lot of healing. It takes a lot of help. It takes a lot of therapy before you can start to look at that in a healthy way that doesn't perpetuate the same shame cycle
Mhm.
that puts you back in a space of like, so that was just my thing of like, what you were feeling is absolutely valid. And you looking at your spot, your role in life. And so you stop creating these patterns. So you're able to live, but that doesn't come first. And if you hear that first,
It's
then
super
very
hurtful.
much you're like, what? Like,
I
that's,
remember hearing stuff, along the way, and I know you can relate to this as well, but there's plenty of times when we're trying to like navigate this journey of healing and you'll hear stuff that you're like, fuck off. Like that doesn't, not
Mhm.
only do I not resonate with that, but that's bullshit, right? There's these parts of like the healing journey and the healing process where you have to be able to use your voice and communicate and express and speak out when things don't feel right. And I think that's massively important. And I think that's what was taking place on Facebook with this post was people speaking out and saying, this isn't right. And I'm like, yes, I'm so grateful that on our little Facebook page, we've created enough of a space where people feel like they can do that. And we don't come back with defensive. We don't come back with arguing. We don't come back and block you immediately. Like, we encourage people to not agree with everything that we say. And by all means, let us know when you don't agree with what we say, right? Because it's a beautiful dance that we all get to take place and take part in, of learning and healing together. And that's the thing where it's like being willing to sit in the discomfort of, even if that's the other really big thing that came for me in this experience, was because we're talking about this where it's like this mirroring that takes place, right? So I have to sit with the judgment and criticism of somebody thinks that we're wrong. Somebody thinks that I'm wrong, right? And they get to. I'm not going to be right all the time. Also, not everybody is going to agree with everything that I say. It's kind of what you were saying earlier, right? And they don't have to. But then I have a wounded little inner child inside of me whose responsibility it was to keep people safe, or who was programmed to think that that was their responsibility. And in the process of that programming of that little child that's inside of me, another message that they got was that their thoughts or actions better not ever hurt anybody or upset anybody. And if they do, then they need to fix that immediately, right? And apologize and correct. So I have really, really built-in people-pleasing skills that I used for a very long time in order to keep me safe. So suddenly we have people online on Facebook who are upset and want us to do something about it. And I had to look at that part of me that wanted to immediately correct it, wanted to immediately fix it, wanted to immediately apologize, immediately like backpedal and replace and delete and fix and caveat and do everything in order to make somebody else feel better who was dysregulated by something that we said, by something that we shared. So then I get to heal or sit with that part of me that is like, oh, we can't sit here and hold still when somebody else is dysregulated and upset by something that I said. I can fix this immediately, right? It's the same thing that we struggle with as parents, where we don't ever want to be the cause of hurting our children with something that we said or our actions. And sometimes we do. And then we just have to sit there and let them be hurt and be in pain, right? It's the same thing between you and me. I never want to upset you. I never want to hurt you. I never want to cause you pain. And then when I do, I just have to deal with it sometimes. I'm not saying like, well, sucks to be Steph. I just said something, right? Of course, there's this big caveat that it's like, change your actions, right? I'm not saying don't change anything if you're hurting your partner's feelings. Like, there's plenty of times where I need to course correct and change my behavior and my actions. And then there's unfortunately just times where stuff happens and your feelings are going to get hurt. And there's nothing to be done about it other than just be in the discomfort of it all together, right?
We were meant to be. We were meant to be.